They laughed as he got the old car, as his inheritance called it, junk, said his father must have lost his mind, while his stepbrother signed property deeds and toasted champagne. He stood there holding a single rusted car key, but when he turned that key weeks later, what the engine revealed didn't just change his life, it exposed a secret his father took to the grave. Before we go any further, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Now let's begin. You want the truth. The room smelled like old paper and lemon polish, and Marcus sat very still. The lawyer read the will line by line. Ethan leaned back, bored. Charles tapped his pen like a drum. When the list of estates and companies ended, both brothers smiled like they had already spent it. Then came Marcus. One item, a car, an old car that barely ran. The lawyer cleared his throat and repeated it as if the air had misheard. Marcus blinked once, eyelids slow, jaw set. He folded his hands to keep them from shaking. Charles snorted. Scrap metal. Ethan laughed louder than needed. Someone in the hallway whispered, cold. Another voice answered, guy got played. The lawyer pretended not to notice. Marcus nodded, him and Rose, no scene. The silence carried a weight. Only he felt outside. The sun was pale and the wind dry. The car waited at the curb. Paint faded to tired gray. Mirror cracked like a thin smile. He ran a thumb over the hood. Dust-streaked, he could smell stale gasoline, old rubber, a ghost of his father's cologne. The tow truck driver squinted. You sure about this? Marcus said yes. On the street, two teens filmed on their phones. Bro, look at that bucket. A woman with grocery bags shook her head. Shame. Marcus kept his face neutral, breath even. He watched the straps tighten. He checked them twice. At the apartment, he guided the tow into a narrow spot behind the building. His neighbor, Mrs. Lang, peered over her balcony in a robe. Your daddy leave you that? He nodded. Then treat it gentle, she said. Grief makes hands clumsy. Night came early. He wiped the windshield with a damp cloth and sat in the driver's seat. Brings pressed his back. The key turned with a gritty click. The engine coughed, then gave up. He did not curse. He listened to the quiet, a train horn carried from far off. He opened the glove box. A brittle map, a parking stub, no letter. He shut it and exhaled. The sting behind his eyes surprised him. He missed the old man. Even with the distance, he set his forearms on the wheel and let one slow breath leave him. Across the alley, a boy on a scooter rolled by and stared. That yours? Marcus said. Yes, looks haunted, the kid said. Marcus almost smiled. Maybe it is. He locked the car, pocketed the key, and looked up at the soft moon. Fine, let them laugh. Tomorrow he would find a place that understood old engines. Tonight he would sleep with the window cracked enough to hear the metal cool. Morning light found Marcus easing car out by inches, palm on the fender, shoulder against cool metal. The alley smelled of wet concrete and last night's fry oil. He checked the straps, waved the tow truck forward. The driver muttered, she's tired. Marcus said, so am I, and almost smiled. They rolled up to a low brick building with a hand-painted sign. Inside the car club, the air was dense with oil and coffee. A radio hissed a blues line. A tall woman in a denim shirt wiped her palms on a rag. What are we looking at? Her tag Redilla. Marcus kept it simple. My father's barely runs. Leia leaned into the open hood and sniffed as if the smell might confess. Not junk, she said, but not simple. She waved to the back. Frank, a look. Frank arrived quiet and careful. He peered at the chassis stamp and a small plate near the firewall, then stepped back like someone checking a painting. Huh, he said, and did not explain. Leia noticed. Well, he shrugged. Let's not spook it. They circled. Leia traced a crease under bad paint. This line only exists when somebody cared. A younger tech rolled a cart closer. Pull the plugs. Leia nodded. Small movements, shared language. the hum of people who listened to machines by the coffee station. A couple whispered, "I've seen that grill in a book," the man said. "You always say that," the woman replied, but her eyes stayed on the car. Frank slid under the front with a flashlight. Original control arms, he called, hand-stamped. He asked for a mirror, angled it deep, then read numbers in a low voice. Leia repeated them. Silence held. "That matches an early run," Frank said at last. No drum roll, just a fact set gently on the table. Heat rose in Marcus' cheeks. Not triumph, relief. He had not imagined the tug that brought him here. He rested a thumb on the cracked wheel and let the grit anchor him. Leia asked to pull the rear seat. The bolts groaned. Dust fanned the air. An envelope slid out from the springs. His name on the front in his father's blunt hand. The room held its breath. Marcus slipped it into his jacket without opening it. He wanted the truth before the letter told him what to feel. They worked without theater. Leia brushed a badge with a soft toothbrush. The tech loosened a seized bolt in slow quarter turns. Frank sketched notes in a neat hand. Marcus fetched trays, held a lamp steady. The radio faded under murmurs and the faint tick of cooling metal. Two teenagers pressed faces to the glass. "Dude, that's from the rumor," one whispered. "You live on rumor," the other said. By noon, the shape under grime looked deliberate. Frank unwrapped a manual and compared measurements, checking twice and then again. His voice stayed soft. "If this is what I think, it belongs in light, not a backlot." Leia met Marcus's eyes. "Next step, verification," she said. He nodded. The envelope thumped his ribs like a drum. He did not open it. The truth was still speaking. He exhaled. Verification took a week. The car stayed behind a rope. Half disassembled, half reborn. Experts came and went, whispering around it like doctors at a quiet bedside. They measured, photographed, compared paint layers. Every time Marcus walked in, conversation dropped, then resumed softer. Frank handled the calls. Leia dealt with the paperwork. Marcus waited, helping where he could, passing wrenches, wiping metal dust off his sleeves, nights. He reread the note's handwriting without opening it, memorizing the curve of his father's M. It felt like the old man still had something to say, but wanted him to earn the silence first. One morning, a museum curator arrived in a dark coat. He didn't waste words. "This is it," he said after one slow walk around. "A 1967D prototype lost for decades. It shouldn't exist." He turned to Marcus. "You're aware what that means?" Marcus nodded. "Not yet." The curator smiled. "You will." Within days, news spread. Car magazines called it the ghost find. Journalists hovered outside the club's door. Some wanted his story. Others wanted the price. Marcus ignored them. He told Frank to finish the restoration, then went home to the apartment that still smelled of machine oil and coffee. That night, he finally opened the envelope. Inside, a single page: "To my son, Marcus. This carried me through debt, doubt, and humiliation. People saw rust, I saw survival. If you're reading this, you've learned that lesson yourself. Don't sell it too fast. Let it breathe. Let it teach. When your brothers forget what matters, remind them with patience, not pride." The handwriting broke halfway through. Last line. Marcus folded the letter slowly, like something fragile. He returned to the club at dawn. The crew had uncovered the car completely. Sunlight hit its body, showing silver beneath the dull paint. The museum offered a deal: permanent display under Marcus' name, royalties monthly, enough for a quiet life. He accepted on one condition, that the plaque include his father's. At the exhibit unveiling, flashbulbs popped. Leia nudged him. "You just went from broke to booked for interviews." He laughed once. "I'll pass." In a corner, two men whispered near the rope barrier. "That's the guy they laughed at during the wheel reading," one said. The other replied, "Who's laughing now?" Marcus ignored them. He ran a fingertip over the hood's polished curve, cool under the lights. The machine that once coughed and died now purred faintly, alive again. Weeks later, checks started arriving, steady, clean, enough to rebuild without show. He bought a small house outside the city, fixed the fence himself, and spent afternoons teaching neighborhood kids to rebuild junkyard bikes. He never told them about the museum money. What mattered wasn't the fortune. It was the proof that value hides where arrogance never looks. At the end of the third month, he parked his pickup beside the museum steps. Inside, visitors moved slow, faces lit by reflection from the car. He watched them and thought his father wasn't teaching him about engines. He was teaching him how to see. 6 months passed. The news cycle moved on, but Marcus' life stayed steady. The museum checks came quietly, enough to fund the youth garage he opened in the old warehouse near his father's neighborhood. It smelled of oil, steel, and new beginnings. Kids from the block called it the workshop. One rainy afternoon, as Marcus taught a boy how to torque a bolt evenly, a black sedan pulled up. 2 men stepped out in tailored suits, Ethan and Charles. No laughter now. Rain streaked their collars. Their eyes held the dull shine of people who'd run out of lies to tell. Charles spoke first. "We need help." Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, motion calm. "What happened?" Ethan hesitated. "Bad loans, taxes. The company's gone." The garage went quiet. A few kids pretended not to listen. Marcus nodded once. "Sit." He poured 3 coffees into chipped mugs. Steam rose between them. The air tasted of engine smoke and pride swallowed. Ethan said, "We were wrong." Marcus didn't rush. He watched rain trace slow lines down the glass. "Dad warned you," he said softly. "Money without meaning burns quick." Charles stared at the floor. "You going to turn your back?" Marcus shook his head. "He told me to help if you ever lost your way." He handed them paperwork, schedules, names, lists of repairs. "You start Monday." "No titles, just work." Ethan frowned. "You're hiring us." "No," Marcus said. "I'm giving you a place to rebuild something honest." They didn't argue. They came back the next week, early and silent. At first, they moved stiffly, unused to real labor, but the days shaped them. By the third week, Charles was under a car with grease on his cheek, joking with a teenager. Ethan handled inventory, steady and patient. One afternoon, Leia visited from the museum. She watched the brothers working and smiled. "Didn't think you'd go soft." Marcus shook his head. "Not soft, just learned what worth means." Word spread through the town that the Reed brothers had turned the old workshop into a community hub. Parents stopped by with snacks. Kids brought broken bikes. And the same neighbors who once whispered now nodded with respect. Months later, an invitation came from the museum for an anniversary event. The brothers dressed simply and went together. The hall glowed with quiet music and polished glass. The old car gleamed under perfect lights. A plaque beneath it reading, "Thomas Reed's Legacy, proof that true wealth is built, not inherited." Ethan touched the plaque. "He'd like this." Marcus replied, "He'd like that we finally got it." They stood there until closing, saying nothing more. When they walked out, the night air felt lighter. The old guilt washed off in silence. Marcus looked back once at the car through the glass wall. It reflected 3 silhouettes equal at last. The rust had been burned away long ago, but its lesson stayed. What others call scrap can carry a family home again. A year later, the workshop buzzed with life. Tools clinked, compressors hissed, and kids argued over engine timing like it mattered to the world. Marcus moved between bays, sleeves rolled. The same calm pace he'd kept since that day at the lawyer's office. He never bragged about the car or the money. He let the noise of work speak for him. The old garage walls now bore new paint, white and blue, clean lines. A mural stretched across one side, his father's face outlined in silver. The words, "Build, don't beg." One Saturday morning, he found Ethan teaching a group of kids how to change brake pads. The man who once mocked him now laughed easily. Dirt under his nails, patience in his voice. Charles was in the office, balancing accounts, explaining budgets like he finally understood what numbers cost. Marcus stepped outside. The city air was warm. the smell of asphalt and fuel mixed with rain from last night. He leaned against the railing, hands rough, eyes steady. Across the street, two women talked near the bus stop. "That's the guy from the inheritance story," one whispered. The other said, "Funny how life flips. Those brothers used to run everything. He didn't turn, he just listened. A faint smile curling, let them talk. The truth didn't need defending anymore." Later that week, the museum requested a new plaque, one honoring Marcus' restoration program. The exhibit now included photos of the workshop, the kids, and his brothers working beside him. The car still shone beneath the lights, but the caption changed. "The Reed Legacy, proof that wisdom outlives wealth." During the ceremony, the curator handed Marcus a mic. "You want to say something?" he asked. Marcus glanced at the crowd. "Reporters, students, locals." He said, "My father taught me that worth isn't found in what runs smooth, but in what you're willing to rebuild. That's all." Applause came soft and real. When the lights dimmed, Marcus stood alone beside the car. His reflection merged with his father's photo in the glass display. For a second, he could almost hear the old man's voice saying, "Now you understand." He whispered, "Yeah, I do." Outside, rain started again, tapping the museum windows like quiet applause. Marcus zipped his jacket and walked into the night, hands in his pockets, the city lights stretching ahead. Behind him, the car sat still and perfect, a relic that carried a family from arrogance to grace. And just like that, the story closed where it began, with a man, a father's lesson, and a machine that turned mockery into memory. Sometimes what looks worthless hides the greatest legacy. Marcus didn't chase revenge. He built something lasting. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to be reminded that humility often wins louder than pride.